Joining me now to talk about how the public sector can use artificial intelligence to, among other things, help secure their data is Darren Williams. He is founder and CEO of BlackFog. So thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you, Candace. Great to be here.
So to start off, agencies are embracing AI tools that can improve workforce productivity and drive innovation and do a lot of different things. But how employees use these tools often is concerning. So just talk to me a little bit. Why in government is employee use of AI technology often problematic? What risks is it exposing?
Well, what an amazing technology, first of all, right? Just in terms of efficiency gains that we're getting out of AI is unparalleled in history, really. I mean, we're now considering using AI as an employee, right? And so when we think about cost analysis, we think a lot about, well, this is really just we're saving like 5 employees and it's only costing us 10,000 a year. What an amazing technology. But with any great technology and great advance in what we're doing with it is some of the risks, right? And the risks are the loss of intellectual property. And particularly in government, I think we see it in other sectors and healthcare as well, but we consider this is one of the biggest problems that people are facing. And it's so easy and the tools are so easy to utilize, especially a lot of the free stuff out there. It's very easy to upload intellectual property and not understand the implications of what you're doing. And these implications are that data, once it goes into these LLMs, it's gone forever because it's used for training purposes. So it's really important we understand what's really happening and what employees are doing with that data and intellectual property. And I don't think they really care, frankly, right now. In fact, recent statistics that we did a research paper with Sapio at the end of last year, we found that 49% of people are actually using unauthorized LLMs and don't care. They really don't care about the data that they're putting up, the intellectual property, because hey, I can go and pick up the kids at soccer at 3 instead of 4, and I can have all of the work done for the day. So why wouldn't I do that? So these are the sorts of problems we're dealing with. So there needs to be some understanding, I guess, in government that this is what's actually happening.
Well, I guess they're honest, right?
Well, exactly
I
right.
guess
Yeah.
give them
Well,
credit for being honest.
yeah, well, that's true. I mean, it was a confidential survey, so but anonymous, but still, yeah, it's nice to be honest about it. But we just wanted the data, right? It's like it's a really interesting, and we didn't realize how shadow AI was as big a problem as we knew it was a little bit of a problem. We didn't know it was as big as it is.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, how do organizations typically guard against data loss? And how
Yeah,
since
great
employees
question.
are using AI technology so much more expansively than even a couple of years before, whatever, how effective are the traditional security approaches? How effective are they against this new world?
Well, they're not that effective as the problem, right? So the problem is that traditional approach, there's lots of ways you can approach cybersecurity. Now, cybersecurity, everyone has an EDR or endpoint detection and response system in place. That really doesn't focus on the problem itself. And the problem itself is the data movement, right? Everybody's so focused on locking down the devices, they forget it's all about data movement and watching data flowing into these LLMs. And these tools were never designed or built for that, frankly. And then, you've got brute force techniques. Everyone's familiar with firewalls inside organizations, very brute force, block or don't block. And it's really not really built for outbound detection. It can do it, but doesn't work really well. So then we evolved and we had EDR products, which really focus on malware and attack vectors using signature-based detection techniques, a little bit of behavioral, but it's effectively like a little agent that sits on your laptop. That didn't really work either. I mean, it works to some extent from a defensive perspective, but then we sort of thought, oh, how do we fix that? Well, then there's a new technology that came along called DLP, data loss prevention. But guess what? The problem with that is it sort of works like a firewall. It sits on the edge of the network, but it requires packet introspection, which means it looks inside of the packets and sees what it's comprised of, what's inside the packets, and therefore it requires data classification. That's very human intensive. And so what that requires is, oh, look, I have all these confidential documents with social security numbers on it and credit card numbers, for example. Oh, let's go
Mm.
classify them. Well, how do you do that? Well, you need people and people to do that. And that was part of the problems with that technology generally. There's not many successful implementations of DLP because of that. So therefore, we've got a problem in that we cannot detect LLMs and the use of AI very easily because, first of all, there's 10 frontier models, and then they're using a combination of the applications themselves, like Claude, OpenAI, they all have their little apps, and they're talking securely to their back-end systems. Then you've also got the ability to use it with web browsers too. So there's all these nuances that people don't sort of think about, but we as a government, we need to make sure that this information is protected. And so in order to do that, there's got to be specialized tools which are specifically designed for detecting AI. And that's what shadow AI is all about.
That's fascinating. What makes AI related cybersecurity so difficult, in particular, for agencies to address? I mean, you talked
Uh,
about that a little bit, but
so, yeah.
why is it so hard for AI in particular?
Because so there's two components to AI, right? So there's the specific data loss part that we talked about where people are physically uploading information, but there's also the other aspect that people forget that AI is actually being used for attack surface management as well, but it's basically
Mm.
used by the bad guys effectively to try and get into computers. So let's just take some numbers, for example. So if you think about the world that we live in, cybersecurity today is worth about 200 to 250 billion dollars, right? So total size of market. EDR comprises about $6 billion, and then you've got the AI security market now. It's around about $15 billion, and then there's all these subsections inside of that to make up the 250 billion. They are now saying that the new AI security market alone is going to be worth $1 trillion by 2030. Now, why is
Oh,
that?
wow.
It's it's because it's really fascinating. I mean, I live with these statistics every day and look at all the nuances of everything. It's because it's opened up so much attack surface area inside organizations, and government is a treasure trove because guess what? If you can actually get a beachhead inside an organization, maybe we attack your computer, Candace, and we know that you're a dog lover, so we get a little beach head in there, and then we can spread laterally. Well, we can use AI to look at all the attack surface areas. Now, I don't know if you've been tracking the news recently, but obviously Anthropic has been in the news with this whole mythos, the new frontier LLM, that they've decided to pull back a little bit because it scared them in terms of the number of
Yeah.
security holes they were able to detect in most laptops operating systems generally. So this is the world that we're living in. And so whilst AI gives us an incredible capability, like unparalleled in terms of efficiency gains, it also needs to be treated just like any other new technology. We have to think about the security constraints around it as well. And that's where we need to be looking at shadow AI based security tools, etc., as well to help us manage this new technology in a responsible way because we love it, but we just got to understand its limitations and what we need to do alongside it. And a recent statistic, in fact, I was just reading earlier when I was reading the New York Times, they were saying that for every new implementation of an AI tool, you should be carving out anywhere from 15 to 30% of your budget for security measures around it. So basically, you should implement it, no question about it, but let's not just do it in isolation. Let's do it along with a security solution. Let's do some governance, some risk assessment, so make sure that we're licensing the right technologies. So there needs to be a whole program around it. And I mean, it stands to reason, but I thought the numbers were really interesting around that.
I love your data points, by the way. They're excellent.
Oh, thanks.
And
Oh, thanks.
they're an excellent example, I think, of using data to help tell a story, just not just
Well, you're
tossing them
flying
out there.
blind without it, aren't you? I mean,
Yeah.
we deal with this every day, and I love data. And our CMO is really big on data points. Like, we can't go in blind. We've got to have all these great data
Yeah.
points. And she's right, and I love it as well.
So we can talk about a problem, but what is the solution to all this? At a high level, how can agencies protect themselves from shadow AI best? Like, what are the capabilities that are most important?
So it's a multi-phased approach, I would say, that there's really So this is a whole new category. Just remember that, AI has not been around, or has only started right in late 22, early 2023, right? That's when it really
Mm.
took off. So we're really only at the start of it. So there are virtually no tools out there, not very many of them. It's a whole new category of tools that are out there. Now, there are startups happening every day in this field, actually. So everybody's looking at the problem differently. The way we like to look at the problem is let's focus on the data movement itself. Let's focus on the packets themselves. Let's start with the first phase. The first phase we think about is in terms of let's find out the scope of the problem. So stage one is discovery. Let's see what problems we really have there. And so we have a mode where you just run it in the discovery mode and say, how run it for a few weeks and you find out who's using what and where, because we've found that a lot of CEOs' way of discovering this was let's go and ask everybody. And so what happened there is like, hey, what are you doing, Candace? What are you using? Well, I use a bit of that, a bit of this. And what happened invariably was a lot of the time they were being lied to anyway, because a lot of people don't want to explain their secret source for why they're so much more efficient. Some are using Claude, some are using, a few other different tools out there. So that really didn't really help. So what we're really focusing on is let's do some discovery about what's happening, give you some real hard numbers like you talk about. Let's see that, 30% of our company is using OpenAI. Which departments are they? And then from there, we can put some governance around it and say, okay, if say 30% of our company is using OpenAI, we probably should do an enterprise license agreement with OpenAI and have that license, because what people don't understand is that the free ones are fully trainable against the data you put in. But once you get into the enterprise licensing model, they say by default, there is no training done on your data, which is a good thing, right? This is what we want. These are legal agreements between two companies, but we need to know what's going on first. And then we go and do a license agreement, which are not that expensive anyway. And then we say, these are the ordained LLMs. Marketing, you use OpenAI, and the dev team, this is what we do. So, and then the dev team uses Claude. So we have an agreement with Claude. So, or Anthropic. So basically you can carve out different departments using different LLMs, and then you can protect your company from a governance perspective by saying, okay, all of the others are blocked. So you just go toggle, 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 turn them all off, and it only lets those two in. And if you try and use some free editions or some other editions, it will reroute you to the licensed editions, or say, hey, you need to actually ask management for approval to access these tools. So that's how we look at the problem. And then finally, there's a much later stage as part of the tool, which is the agentic AI problem, right? So we're really at the start of this revolution where we're using LLMs and we're writing prompts, getting responses back, and they're giving us answers. But we're now moving into at the edge, I guess, people that are very highly technical, where these agentic AI, these little agents are sitting on your laptops, actually having full access to all your information on your laptop and making decisions for you. But again, people don't know what they're doing. They just know. Are they reading all my email? Yes, they are. Oh, you haven't spoken to Candace for a couple of weeks. Would you like me to set an appointment? Well, they don't even ask you. Let's set an appointment to have lunch next Wednesday, because that's our regular cadence. So there's all these things, but in that is all of these touch points and data access that I'm really, really worried about as a technology guy. It's like, my God, what else is it doing we don't know about? So again, this shadow AI has moved from the general prompts now to an agentic form of it, which is totally blind. So we need to manage that as well. And this is why they say that you have to spend a lot of your budgets just making sure that these things have guardrails around them, because we can't let them go crazy. Who knows what they'll do?
Yeah, I have to say the whole idea of like making appointments for you and all of the kind of thing you're talking about, that just freaks me out.
Me too.
That
I like to
just
be in control, but then I'm a control freak too.
no, it told me too, but you need a little autonomy. Like, it can help, but it shouldn't
Yes,
it shouldn't take over for me anyway.
agree with you.
So you've touched on some of this, but like technology is often abstract. People think of it as sort of abstract terms. So to bring it down to a little bit more of a real level. So say I'm an agency employee. I want to use an unapproved Gen AI application. Say it's in the evening and I get some, brilliant idea after dinner and I want to do some research related to work, whatever.
Yep.
So, but basically, I want to use shadow AI. If my agency has, adopted the solution that, you're talking about, you're advocating for, what happens? Like bells and whistles don't go off to prevent me from accessing it, right? But what happens?
Well, they don't they just stops you in its tracks effectively. So what happens is because it's at packet layer level stuff, because we're let's face it, we're focusing on anti-data exfiltration or the information flowing off of your computer. So at the point that you type in a prompt, if you even get that far, it will actually stop that transaction because that packet is leaving. It will say, no, sorry, you can't contact that LLM. It's not an approved authenticated tool for use in the government. And because it sits on the actual device itself and all the logic is on the device, doesn't matter if you have an internet connection or not, it's still going to lock you down
Hmm.
and or redirect you to the one that is approved and ordained. And it's tricky to do
Huh.
because right, these LLMs are spreading really quickly and whilst there's only 10 frontier ones, I envisage probably in the next 2 years there's going to be 100 or 200 of them. The
Oh, wow.
reason there's not right now is because it's too expensive, right? There's only probably 10 companies in the world that can afford to train these things because it costs an average of $100 million to train one of these LLMs, which is why it's restricted to guys with really deep checkbooks.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's coming
How?
down by a factor of 10, by the way, every year. So
Oh, wow. How does, like, in terms of best practices, how can agencies get better real-time visibility into how their employees are using AI tools? So, in other words, like, how can they tackle shadow AI before it even becomes a problem? Like, what
yeah,
steps can they?
they need to audit it, right? So that's, as I said, is the first stage is take an audit, take a measurement, run a solution basically, and just measure what's happening. And then you'll know the scope of the problem. I mean, you can do self-assessments on these sorts of things as well, honestly. We run them ourselves, right? So people, usually the first step when we're engaging with a customer is we'll say, okay, let's run it on, 100 devices, which is a really quick deployment. And let's just run it for a week and see what you find. And usually they're pretty shocked. Like they don't usually understand the scope of the problem. Literally everybody is using it, but you just don't even know it. And most of them won't admit it, or very few will. So because
Yeah.
they're looking way more efficient, everyone thinks they're brilliant. Even the finance departments, right? So some great examples of companies we've been working with lately. They've got some of these junior guys starting in finance, and they're using the Anthropic or Claude plugin for Excel now, and they're actually doing all their work using that, which used to take like maybe 2, 3 weeks to do some of the work. They're doing it in minutes now. They're saying,
Wow.
do a cost analysis profile using this base data and show me the over and unders on how we would do if we actually increase sales or decrease sales. And so then you can toggle it. It generates all of these amazing spreadsheets. And it's like, it looks brilliant. Like it literally would have taken weeks for an intern to do this stuff. Now it's free, which
Yeah.
effectively free. Unbelievable. And so why wouldn't you use that technology? And so the
Yeah.
companies don't know that's going on. Now, they
Yeah.
also don't know it's sharing all their financial information to these engines. So if they're
Yeah.
not licensed and they're using the free edition, like you're in really big trouble. You're just disclosing all your finances.
How does BlackFog in particular help agencies proactively address the risks that are related to shadow AI? What do you guys do in particular?
So we really, I guess our core technology is all about anti-data exfiltration. We know there are great tools around for defensive security right now where you can just stop things where the attacker's coming towards you, etc. But we're really focused on the data movement itself, like data moving from your device outside of the network to an LLM, for example. And so we look at the packets, we look at the behavioral analysis, we do a lot of AI training on the system, and it's able to detect when you're utilizing AI systems and what data is going to them. And then this is a very new product for us. We were in security, pure security before in attack vectors. Now it's really about the shadow AI problem because we think that's even bigger now. And so we've sort of extrapolated that technology to detect all of this type of activity and provide those audits for you. And then we do all the legal governance work around it as well, where we actually tell you that, look, If you use Mistral and you don't use their enterprise level stuff, you're in real trouble. So there's all of these sorts of legal things that we've sort of wrapped around it, and risks and governance as well. And so we're just extending that further and further. Cost analysis is another one. We're getting into that area too, where you can actually see how much each LLM is costing you, who are the biggest users of each LLM and why. So there's all of those foundational things that, as a business owner myself, I want to know what's going on, who's doing what with, with what LLM, and therefore what are the biggest risks to my company.
I have what may be the hardest question of our entire conversation. If you had to distill everything into just two or three takeaways, what would you like people to know?
I would say shadow AI is happening whether you know it or not, and whether you allow it or not. So that's the first point. It's going to move with whether you do anything at all. So would you rather measure it? And then the last thing I would say is, visibility into data flows is probably the most important change in cybersecurity for the next decade. Everybody's been so focused in the previous decades. If you think about where cybersecurity comes from the old days of antivirus, right? We just do signature detection, and it was great when there was only a few hundred or 1,000, attackers out there. But now
Yeah.
it's millions and even billions of attackers. So it's really, really important that we don't focus on the device itself now, because that's part of the problem, but it's not the actual problem, if you know what I mean. It's sort of like, it's about the data. Ransomware only exists because they need to extract your data to extort you in the first place. It's really the root cause of the problem. So if you can stop data leaving, unauthorized data leaving, you can stop cybersecurity threats, you can stop shadow AI, you can stop pretty much all of the threats, because you're focusing on now the root cause. My PhD is actually in pharmacology, actually in drug development. And so when we think about solving problems, we look at it holistically from the whole body's perspective. And we think about what, instead of just doing symptomatic relief of we need eye drops because she's got a problem with her eye, we say, no, what caused that? And how do we stop the actual mechanism, how do we actually stop the bad guy, or the disease in this case? So when we think about cybersecurity, you extrapolate that. What's the root cause of the problem? If we stop that, that's the kill switch, then that's how we're going to go and do it. And that's what our technology is all about, looking at the kill switch.
Is there anything that you'd like to share that we haven't been able to talk about so far? Any points you'd like to let our audience know?
I would just say that it's such a fast moving market right now, but be very aware of agentic AI and what the capabilities of that are going to, and the exponential problems we're going to start seeing in the next 2 years. So if you don't have a security solution that uses AI right now, you need to be looking at it, because I think that's the next big frontier. Because once you let these guys loose on your device as an agentic AI type of product, you got a whole new set of problems. Shadow AI will seem like a small problem in retrospect, right? Because now you've got all these little agents running around, and and everybody, like, when do you go to an app right now and it doesn't say it's got AI in it? I can't even remember one, right? Every little product I download literally says, "Oh, AI enabled." Well, what does that
Yeah,
even mean? And they don't even
yeah.
tell you sometimes. So, when do you start? The sooner the better, right? That's what I would argue.
Thank you so much. This has been a really great conversation. I appreciate you taking time with me today. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
pleasure. Thank you, Candace. Thanks for your time.